This week we're talking about literacy and culture and campaigns. So, what do I mean by literacy? It's a word that gets used a lot but isn't often defined very clearly. Essentially, what we're thinking about is the extent to which people can understand and use information that you give them. So, the book talks about it as an aptitude and skill to understand knowledge, right? So they can they get the information and can they understand it? Can they gain necessary information when they run into questions or need to seek it? And can they apply the content to real life? So that all sounds all fine and good, right? Do they understand it and can they use it? But it's pretty vague and it's often hard to assess, especially when you talk about specific topics. So, for instance, when we're dealing with health information, can people understand the health information they're provided? Well, a lot of times they don't, right? They're given a large terminology. They don't necessarily know what it means, right? They can say the word back to you, but they can't really understand what it is. They might be able to apply it to real life, right? I have X condition, and so therefore that means I'm supposed to do A, B, and C. But if they need to find information, one of the things that is often concerning when it comes down to health literacy is, can they gain necessary information? How do they even know where to look? How do they find information? Right? The running joke is that if you find something that's wrong with you, you hop on WebMD and you find out how you're dying, right? And that's not a good outcome either, right? Do we want people to be completely illiterate about their health consequences, or do we want them to be incorrectly literate? And so there is obviously work to do on both of those fronts if you're dealing with health information and literacy issues. Well, why does it matter? Well, you can see why this could certainly matter. If you're trying to convince people to do something, right, they need to understand what it is, and you hope that they apply it to their life, but also you want them to be able to access information to help with both of those other instances, right? If you expose them to information and they aren't really sure what it means, do you know that they can find the answers that they need to understand it? And once they have the information, can they actually put it into practice? So a lot of health information is very general, right? People are different, right? We're all kind of, special snowflakes a little bit when it comes down to how our bodies work. And so a one-size-fits-all approach doesn't always work. And so when you are the person that the norm doesn't fit, how do I find the information that I need? Well, you can see that this matters because there has been an initiative going on for years at the federal government level called Healthy People 2030. In order to build a healthier future for all, right? There is a number of metrics, right? And there are 358 core principles or objectives that this large-scale campaign effort seeks to accomplish. Some of them are specific health outcomes to make people understand health information, to stop doing certain behaviors, to engage in other behaviors with specific measurable outcomes. But one of them is health literacy in Healthy People 2030. There's a whole section of this dedicated to health literacy specifically. And one of the things that they emphasize from their website is to eliminate health disparities, achieve improved health for all, and attain health literacy to improve the health and well-being of all. So this is the overarching goal, right? Eliminate health disparities, right? Where some people are disproportionately affected by certain health outcomes. Let's eliminate that. We want to achieve improved health for all, right? Everyone should be a little bit healthier. Attain health literacy is listed as a primary objective of Healthy People. So if you're going to eliminate health disparities and make people healthier overall, health literacy, people understanding health information, is a core principle in trying to achieve all of that. So what does this look like? And there are lots of ways in which we could see how health literacy plays out. Well, of course, when you talk to your doctor, right? Do you understand what they're saying? And there's lots of questions about that. But interesting, one of the indicators of health literacy is your ability, right, to apply it to everyday real world situations. And one of those is having conversations about health with people around you. So if you don't understand something, you're probably not going to discuss it because we don't like to feel like we're uninformed or made to feel, unintelligent about something. So here is one of the indicators from the Healthy People Project. One of the goals is to increase the proportion of adults who talk to friends or family about their health. So if you understand your health and the things that other people are going through, you can discuss this. And you can see based on the evidence gathered, it's getting worse. People are talking about it less. So the target is that 92% of the people that they survey are feeling comfortable and talking about their health outcomes. Currently, it is 79.6. And the baseline, where we started, was 86. We've gone down over the past couple of years since 2017 about the extent to which people are discussing their health. Well, that's not good, right? We have now a decrease in literacy occurring. The extent to which people are willing to discuss and seek information and apply it to their real life. So being able to say, I can't do X, or I would like to engage in X behavior if we do it this way because of something that's affecting my body. We don't want to have those conversations. We are sharing less, which means people know less about the world around them when it comes down to health behaviors. And so we're not engaging in healthy outcomes for those around us. One of the other important pieces that the chapter includes, and I'm glad that it does, is the importance of the digital divide. The digital divide is the extent to which people don't have mutual access to communication technologies. So part of it is access, but part of it is also literacy. So I know what I'm doing. So there is a lot of work being done on the digital divide and digital equity and digital literacy and digital access, and insert a nice sounding word after the word digital, and there's money and effort being put towards it. So if people don't have access to the internet, like there literally isn't reliable internet service to them, that's a divide. Once they have access, do they have a device that can interact with the internet? That's a divide. Once they have the device, do they know what they're doing? I mean, look no further than someone who is 83 years old who has access to extremely high-speed internet and a new computer and has no idea what to do with it, compared to a 12-year-old who is very capable with a device but doesn't own one and can't afford the absorbent price of an internet plan. Right? So that's a disproportionate, outcome in the community. In fact, this is listed in Healthy People as one of the limitations to health literacy, the amount of adults with broadband internet. And this is indicated as getting worse. So we went from 55.9% of adults over 18 having broadband access. That's down to 41. So less than half of adults over 18 in this country report having access to the internet. The target is 60%. In a country as wealthy and capable as the United States, our hope is just barely over half. And right now, less than half have reliable access to the internet. That's a concern. Well, what does that even look like? Well, so I have an image for you here of the surrounding area around WIU and the Macomb campus. And each of these dots represents a quadrant where there is reliable access to the internet. So what that means is that you have access to 100 megabytes download and 25 megabytes upload speed. So access, not even that ever people have a subscription, but just have access. So you can see where there are no dots, there's a lot. There's whole sections of land where that kind of internet access is not available. So that means there are people that don't have access to reliable internet. And this is right, we're near a university. There are people living in those blank spaces who don't have access to reliable internet. I've had conversations with people who will say that they can get online until school gets out, and when the kids come home, they just quit because their local internet service provider can't handle the traffic. So you have people who would maybe like to know about health outcomes, and they are looking up information because they live in a medical desert in which there are no doctors around them. Well, the only thing they have available is to look online. Well, based on this, they can't. They can't get online and find the information that they need. And that 100 megabyte download speed is what the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, has set as the bare minimum of being considered served of having internet access. So if you can't access at that rate, you can't reliably do things like telehealth, of being able to interact with a provider who's not locally available. So you can see this is, you can find other maps that show other health consequences and outcomes overlaid with broadband access. So you can see there are places where there are health disparities that overlap with a lack of broadband access. In some ways, just laying the lines to be able to have internet access can help reduce some of those health disparities. One of the other things that is useful to take into account when we are trying to make sure people understand what we're saying is that we have to understand how they're hearing. And culture and health is complicated because we don't all share the same cultural backgrounds. And one of the things that we can do is we can have some cultural awareness. We can simply understand how other people approach the world. So I understand it differently than you, based on your cultural traditions, based on your religious backgrounds, based on your history, based on your geography, right? All of those things can impact our culture. And there is a difference to which we might engage in acceptance versus tolerance of cultural practices of other people. So I can engage in acceptance, right? I can respect and I can value and appreciate what you do and see the worth and value in it. And I can, in some instances, simply tolerate it. I understand what you do and maybe even why you're doing it, even if I don't necessarily agree with it. So, for example, let's say I am walking through the store and it is I'm in the grocery store and it is 2 o'clock in the afternoon and a child says they are thirsty, and I see a parent give their child some juice. Okay, totally understand it, right? Juice, sure, there's lots of sugar in it, but you know what? It's 2 o'clock in the afternoon, juice is appropriate, and they are giving their kid something that's based on a food, right? That's I would accept that. Other situations in which I have been at the store and it is 9:30 at night and I see a child who is in diapers awake at 9:30 being pushed around in a cart by someone, and the child is crying, and I watch the parent unscrew a 20 ounce of Mountain Dew and hand it to the child that's in diapers. Now, acceptance? No. Tolerance? Barely, I guess. But there may be reasons, and we will certainly engage in judgments of others' behaviors. It doesn't mean we can't be aware and understand what it is. It doesn't always mean that we have to like it. So there's a fine line between understanding and acceptance and tolerance. But whatever the case may be, when we are trying to interact with people with different backgrounds, you do need to understand their cultural norms. What kind of access do they have? What kind of history are they coming from? What are their traditions? Because at the end of the day, we can talk about a campaign trying to reach a vast quantity of people and large populations that we want to see widespread change. But health is locally situated. Your experiences are going to be determined by your social and physical surroundings. And that is going to be different from if you were in another place. So, being in Macomb, I have a child with food allergies. If I need to see someone who can understand and how to help us with that, there is nobody available locally. We have to drive 2.5 hours to the University of Iowa to see a specialist. That is a locally situated problem. So I have to know what it is that I'm going to get out of that interaction before I commit to driving 5 hours round trip. I'm going to have to know a little bit more before I go. As opposed to if I lived nearby, I maybe wouldn't have been quite so concerned about how much I get out of that trip. And when you don't know what someone else is experiencing, you don't bother to take that into account. So every time there is something that involves food and we are invited and we are always refusing the food, they are always surprised. And when we remind them of the food allergies, they think, oh, of course, I didn't even realize. So when we aren't experiencing a particular health behavior, we don't think about how that might affect other people. And so that is why that cultural awareness piece is so important. Because it doesn't affect us, it's not part of our cultural worldview, and so we tend to ignore it. Whereas other people are experiencing things very differently because of what is their local environment, what is their local surrounding culture, what is their local social interactions or access to whatever we consider to be a healthy behavior. And if they don't have the same kind of opportunities, then we can't expect them to engage in what we think is a successful outcome. So knowing cultural awareness wrapped up with digital literacy and digital access and health literacy is a very complicated problem of figuring out who has access to the information and who can understand it, and from what point are they attempting to understand it, given their cultural background.